Show is only...
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army. And now, ladies and gentlemen,
We are now about to witness the truth.
it's the Benjamin Dixon Show.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Benjamin Dixon Show. I am, of course, your host, Benjamin Dixon. It is Wednesday, June 8th, 2016. Thank you so much for joining us. We have an interesting show for you tonight. A lot of things happening that I didn't get to cover last night, so I have to address it tonight. Particularly, I want to deal with New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, essentially BDSing BDS. BDS, of course, is the movement, the boycott, divest, and sanction of Israel. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. Also, last night we discussed at great length the potential of the AP's call, preliminary preemptive strike call of the election having an adverse effect on voter turnout. And it appears as if that is exactly what happened. We knew it would happen simply because of the role that the media plays. And it looks like the exact thing we predicted happened. So we're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about life without Bernie and what that means. What's next? Not in a distant future, but what's next? Like what should be happening right now? A lot of people are preparing for the convention in Philly. A lot of Bernie Sanders supporters are taking it all the way to Philly. Bernie Sanders essentially alluded to that he's going to take this all the way to Philly. But what does that actually look like? And then we'll talk about it in a broader sense on a larger scale. And then we're also going to talk about a couple other things. I can't name them all right now. So let's start with the Associated Press. We discussed this last night because it was clear to anyone who wanted to be reasonable that the Associated Press engaged in journalistic malpractice by calling the entire primary for Hillary Clinton the night before a Super Tuesday. And this is something that has been really, I would expect anyone. Well, maybe I should start with the fact that it does look like it's over in a lot of ways. Last night was an astounding night for, I guess you could say, for Hillary Clinton, but you see what happens when you allow shenanigans to get in the midst of something that you felt was already inevitable, right? If you supported Hillary Clinton, you should be upset about this too, because now this leaves a stain on your victory. And the thing that disappoints me is that a lot of these people who are ostensibly, they are ostensibly enlightened and progressive, all of a sudden don't care about how they win so long as that they win. And that's the problem that I have. So last night was, for them, a magnificent night. It was a historic night in the sense that, she has verbally clinched. She's the presumptive nominee. So all of that happened last night. But in the midst of this happening last night, the Associated Press had a direct effect on the turnout. The final tally from last night, HRC, Hillary Clinton in California got 55.8% of the vote. Sanders got 43.2% of the vote, a difference of 12.6%, which is completely, it goes against all of the polling data in advance. It goes against all of the it doesn't add up to most people involved. Who's looking at this through objective lenses. Now, I did see Nate Silver send out a tweet essentially touting this as another example of how polling overall has been wrong. No, not really. Some of your polling, Nate, has been wrong. This is not an example of how the polling was wrong. This is an example of how the media has a direct effect on the turnout. and why media organizations absolutely should never make the news. They should report the news. They should never insert themselves in the news. They should simply report the news. And this is exactly the case. So 3.475 million voters, total votes. The experts estimated that 8 million voters would participate. That represents about 32% of eligible voters. Now, here's the problem. 32% is piss poor in the first place. So we'll talk about that in context by itself. But according to Think Progress, as of this afternoon, only 24% of eligible voters participated in the election last night. 24%, a difference of 8%. Now, across the board, there are a lot of voices who are very disappointed, upset, and sounding the alarm. But here's the problem. The election is over for California. There's very little that can be done. And the media knows this. When an election has passed, there is very little that can be done to overturn or to reverse the forces that led to the result. They know full and damn well that if you set something in motion and get past election night, that there's very little recourse for somebody to take action. And so it doesn't matter to a lot of people. It doesn't matter that this action by the Associated Press looks like it's going to result in about an 8% decrease in voter turnout in California alone. Doesn't matter to them because the election night is over. Hillary Clinton has declared herself to be the winner, and everyone, or we'll say a lot of people, are prepared to just move on. Which is amazing to me because it shows you the extent to which people are willing to risk their reputation, their credibility, and their integrity for what? For political opportunities, for political expediency, for what? But it just shows you the extent to which people are willing to go and the extent to which people are willing to justify something that had it happen to them, they would be up in arms. And I found it funny that Hillary Clinton sent out a tweet, or her team, whoever runs her social media campaign, sent out a tweet last night, or actually on the 6th, when when they actually, declared her the winner. Team Hillary Clinton sent out a tweet essentially saying that, no, the race is not over. We still, thanks for this, but the race isn't over. Make sure everyone votes, yada, yada, yada. But at the same time, that same night, they sent out an email saying a secret win, right? So Hillary Clinton had the advantage of playing both sides in this. Of being, oh, no, AP, don't do that. That's not how we do it. That's not right. Everyone still go out and vote. And at the same time, she's able to capitalize on the status of the presumptive nominee that the Associated Press granted her. This is, I told you last night, and I'm going to say it again. The Clintons and the people around the Clintons don't know when to stop. Because if this was so wrapped up and in the bag, there is absolutely no reason or justification for this to have happened. None whatsoever. And if you believe that they had nothing, no connection to this at all whatsoever, I've got a bridge to sell you. So just file this underneath no shit, Sherlock. The Associated Press, it looks like they have had an effect. The estimated expectation of voter turnout was to be 8 million, or 32%, 32% of the voter turnout of eligible voters. And as of Wednesday, it looks like 24%. 24% has shown up in California alone. Okay, let me take this caller, and then we're going to talk about Governor Cuomo. Caller, you're live on the air. What's your name, comment, and/or question?
Hi, my name is Mo.
Hey, Mel, how are you? What's on your mind?
First of all, I hope you're having a good night. I'm loving listening to you.
Thanks.
And second of all, I think we should nominate Elizabeth Warren. I think she would be a great unifier at this point. It's been a contentious race between Sanders and Clinton. I am still Sanders.
Mm-hmm.
But I would love to see him, put out that olive branch. I think it would be good for the party.
When you say, let me clarify. When you say we should nominate Elizabeth Warren, are you saying that we should nominate her for the presidency on the Democratic side?
Yep.
Okay, unpack that a little bit for me.
Elections are not about candidates. They're about the people, right?
Mm-hmm. Essentially,
and
that's what we hope.
When we started this race,
yeah,
right. And when we started this race, did we think for a minute that, let's face it, the ones of us who got in here early, did we really think we were going to have this much success? I didn't.
Mm.
I've been around a few years. I've been around a few campaigns. And he has obviously done tremendously well.
Yeah.
But it's pretty clear that the superdelegates, I don't think they're going to flip. I think they are establishment people.
Oh, yeah.
And we're going to end up with Hillary. And, Elizabeth Warren has a fantastic reputation of really exposing so many of the issues that we've been fighting for during this campaign.
All right. Thanks so much.
I think it would be kind of hard I would hope, and I really hope, it would be hard for the party who's actually now talking about her being a VP nominee. I know Harry Reid is apparently pushing for an Elizabeth Warren VP
I saw that today.
with Hillary.
Yeah.
I do not think that's going to work out very well. I don't think Hillary would be interested at all in working with Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah, and I don't think that she would be interested in sharing the historical moment with another woman, to be honest with you. Thanks so much for that call. I think it's an interesting perspective. I don't know how realistic it is, only in the sense that the only way Hillary Clinton will not be the nominee at this point is if there is a problem, which the Associated Press, who was completely late or too early with their announcement about the campaign being over, just now reported today that the CIA, that it's a possibility that Hillary Clinton had confidential CIA operative information that could have potentially been hacked. Or let me rephrase that. She had confidential information on agents and it was potentially hacked. This is something that just came out from the Associated Press today. So let's say that actually pans out and the investigation actually shows this. And that's really the only way she would not become the nominee at this point. There's no way that they would allow that they would circumvent Hillary Clinton, not this party, not the party that has, basically crucified all of their credibility in order to get Hillary Clinton this far. So I don't think that's going to happen. And if Hillary Clinton was to, let's say, indicted for the email issue, right? Let's just put that out there. If she was, then they're going to look at the Bernie Sanders supporters are going to say, well, hell no, not Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders. And the establishment is going to say, no, hell no, not Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden. So I think Elizabeth Warren falls to like the number 4 spot. If something happens to Clinton, Bernie, and Biden, then Elizabeth Warren. I like Hillary, Elizabeth Warren, but have some other things. Actually, I'm talking about Elizabeth Warren in a few moments. Okay. I am going to, let me shift gears. I've been joined by a guest tonight, and we're going to talk about Governor Cuomo in New York. And we're going to talk about I'm calling it the BDSing of BDS. Because that's essentially what Cuomo is doing there. Hey, Matt, how's it going tonight?
I'm good. How are you, Ben?
I'm doing great. Now, Matt, I don't want to, I know you well enough to know your last name, and I have a pretty good idea of how to pronounce your last name, but I've gotten wise enough not to even try or pretend. Could you pronounce your last name for the audience?
Well, we use the Americanized version. It's just Sinkowitz.
Sinkowitz. Okay.
Yeah,
I was
but if you
close.
look at it spelled out, that is not intuitive. Not much is out of those letters.
And you notice whenever we speak, I always just say Matt. I don't say Professor Sinkowitz. I just say Matt because I just, it's not as easy as Dixon. But I want you, first of all, I want you to introduce yourself because I don't want to say too much or too little. Tell everybody a little bit about your background, and then let's talk about Governor Cuomo.
Yeah, sure. So, as Ben carefully avoided saying, I'm Professor Matt Sinkowitz. I am a professor of communication and international studies at Boston College. My area of study is media studies in general, global media studies more specifically, and Middle Eastern American interactions via media even more specifically. I have written a number of articles about Palestinian media, about American funding of Palestinian and Afghan media, and I'll put a plug out there too. I've got a book coming out this summer called The Other Air Force, which is about American funding of radio stations, television stations, and films throughout the Middle East, based mostly on my field research in the West Bank and in Kabul, Afghanistan.
Great. Okay, so I wasn't sure if you wanted to put the university out there that you work at, just because I know a lot of professors like to just say I'm a professor, but not necessarily at what school. But anyway, it's out there. It's
No.
great.
Yeah,
Let's
absolutely. I'm
talk about-
coming to you live from Chestnut Hill, my office in Boston College.
Yeah, and you have a great camera there, by the way. Speaking of media, the camera quality is spot on. So we'll talk about that offline.
It's a private school. You should see the tuition bills.
No, I have an idea about the tuition bills. So
Yeah, that's a whole other show, which I'd be happy to talk about.
Yeah,
but,
no,
maybe
we probably-
after tenure, maybe.
Yeah, okay. There you go. We'll wait for that. All right. So I wanted to bring you on this conversation. First, let me just give a little background. So over the weekend, Governor Cuomo has issued an executive order, essentially declaring that he's ordering state agencies to boycott anyone who boycotts Israel, to divest from anyone who's threatening to divest from Israel, and to sanction anyone who's threatening to sanction Israel. Essentially, he's BDSing the BDS movement. And the BDS movement, a lot could be said about their motivations, their strategy, their effectiveness, but essentially the overarching theme is trying to attack Israel where it hurts financially for human rights violations. What they see is human rights violations, and there's going to be people who agree with them, and there's going to be people who vehemently disagree with them. I want to talk about, and feel free to comment on any of that, but I want to talk about the use of force of the executive order, the executive branch of the state of New York, to essentially, in my opinion, silence political dissent. What do you think about that and the entire episode?
Right. Well, I mean, the first thing I would do is just add a little bit to your description. And you're absolutely right. The BDS movement is largely economic. A lot of it is economic, but it's also cultural. It's not just a boycott of Israeli businesses. It's also a boycott of Israeli institutions and Israeli artists and a number of other things, which expands it beyond the realm of the economic and into certain political cultural aspects, which I think is relevant in the discussion. But that said, I think that your characterization of it and your ironic characterization of it is pretty spot on. We can talk about BDS as sort of a separate issue, and it's probably worth teasing out why he thinks that this doesn't sound as bad as it probably sounds to much of your audience. Yeah. But first, we can explain why it sounds so bad. I mean, there's a terrible irony to it. On the one hand, it's just this, extremely liberal, strong-arm action. But on the other hand, the irony of it is that on the one hand, the complaint about BDS by people who are willing to give reasons as opposed to simply cry anti-Semitism, which we can talk about the merits of that separately. But for those who want to give reasons, they will say that the problem with BDS, or one of the problems with BDS, is that it singles out Israel, for human rights violations, for occupation, for acting against the ideals that we'd like to hold them to, but it only singles out Israel, whereas there are a number of other countries that would be equally or nearly equally or even more so able to be sort of painted with this brush. Right, so the people who attack BDS will say something like, "You're gonna boycott Israeli universities, but American universities are okay with all of their ties in with the military and ties in with the State Department, and these sorts of things." Right, so they'll say that this is an unfair singling out of one institution. What is Cuomo doing when he singles out BDS? It's something very similar. I mean, certainly there are a number of institutions and movements that are doing things that he doesn't like. Right? Why is he singling this one out? It looks like it's just a restriction on free speech. It's got questionable legality, and I think it's ironic.
What do you think is the irony part? Why do you think it's ironic?
That this movement, which is faulted for picking out one example of Israel, and saying that's what Cuomo's problem presumably is that BDS just picks out Israel and it doesn't look at other violators, right? It's this one institution. He in turn has done something similar, thing. Right?
Okay.
In that it's just this one. Certainly, BDS is not the only thing out there that violates the principles that Cuomo thinks that BDS is violating, or I would presume it is not.
So here's the problem with it, though. So he's not only targeting the BDS organization, such as there is such a thing, but he's targeting any organization that takes any type of economic protest, right? So let's say there's just an organization who may not identify 100% with the leadership of BDS. They may not even agree with the overarching goals of BDS, but they agree that something should be done about the perceived and actual human rights violations that take place. So now they are potentially going to be put on this. I can't even believe that he fixed his mind and his mouth and his pen to write that we're going to make essentially a blacklist, and anyone who takes any economic actions in protest against Israel is going to be put on this blacklist. So where does he draw that line between just an economic protest?
Well, I mean, again, the irony is pretty thick in that one of the strongest critiques of BDS is that it associates all Israelis and puts them into one basket, right? Doesn't differentiate between Israelis who are anti-occupation and Israelis who are pro-occupation. It doesn't make these kinds of distinctions. And as you point out, if he really wants to go through and find anybody who has any association with BDS whatsoever, he's making a similar or maybe almost the exact same mistake or jump or sort of guilt by association. There's no question that you're not going to be able to tease out which people follow all of the BDS elements. Do they follow the parts that he finds problematic versus the parts that he doesn't find problematic? You're absolutely right. How does he get away with it is a political question. It's not a logical question, and that might be part of the problem. I'm trying to sort of work through it logically. I think there is some logic to some of the critiques of BDS that he's putting into this, but overall it's not a logical decision, it's a political decision. And it's best understood through some of the foundational research that's been done on this area. There's a book by John Mearsheimer and Stephen Walt called The Israel Lobby. In many ways, it's been proven wrong and a little bit out of date. The Iran deal really threw a wrench into their thesis, but the major principle of the Israel Lobby, and it's just one part of the book, but it's the most important part, is that there tends to be no political cost for attacking the pro-Palestinian side of things.
Yeah.
So there is a political benefit. And again, this is, if you read The Israel Lobby, it's a nuanced book to the extent that it wants to be clear that it doesn't think advocating for Israel is a problem. It thinks that the imbalance comes from the fact that there is nothing pushing back in the other direction.
And so let me jump in there, because we saw that even with Hillary Clinton's speech at AIPAC, right? She went full-throated, pro-Israel Netanyahu, essentially hand in hand with
pro-Israeli government policy at the moment. There are many of us,
Right.
myself included, who feel that this is directly against the long-term interests of Israel, and would say that Cuomo's supposed protection of Israel is actually one of the worst things you can do for it. Right. But your point's well taken.
Yeah, no, definitely, because and this is where I was going to go with Hillary Clinton is essentially is that she threw under the bus any left-leaning progressive voices from Israel, right? And in her unfettered support for Netanyahu, and in a lot of ways, Cuomo has done the exact same thing. So I agree with you in the sense that no matter where you fall on this, if you can be pro-Israel and still feel like these type of tactics undermine the long-term best interest of Israel, because in a very rich conversation that I would want to have, but we're going to have it another time, about how our actions and our aggression can undermine us in the long run. But most people really can't delve over into that manner of thinking. A lot of people just think if we just are strong armed and we throw down the hammer, then that strengthens us. But in actuality, it doesn't. And when I say us, I'm talking about any group, whether you're just American or African American or any other group. Every strong arm tactic is not in your best interest. And this is something that Cuomo has done. He's just full-throated, gone against everybody, a blanket covering of anyone who boycotts. I want to see how they're going to actually execute this, because the constitutionality of something like this definitely comes into question in my mind. I don't see how he actually gets away with this legally, because he's using the force of the government and the coffers of the government to essentially silence political dissent. What do you think about that, and where do you fall on that?
Well, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, I'm not a legal scholar. From what I read, it seems extremely questionable. But I think that the fact that it's questionable tells us a lot. Tells us that he doesn't have to enact it.
Yeah.
To my reading, what he's trying to get out of this is not actually to defend Israel. And like I said before, I think this would be a very foolish way to try to do that anyway. What he's doing is getting his bona fides out there, right? He is taking a political lane. I mean, it becomes touchy, but he's governor of New York, right? The Jewish vote matters tremendously to him. There are, of course, there is, and you're speaking to one of them, a large portion of the Jewish community who looks at this and is appalled. But it will generally not cost him any votes amongst the Jewish population, and it will gain him some, right? It has to do with there's very little pushback, right? So the extent to which it's going to happen is almost, I would say it's irrelevant, partly because I think you're right, that I don't think he will execute it. But what he's doing here is making a clear statement, and he's taking a lane, right? So Cuomo wants to be a Democrat. You're in New York, you've got to be a Democrat, right? I mean, not strictly speaking, but you basically have to be a Democrat. But you need a lane, right? And his lane is that sort of conservative Democrat lane.
Got it.
Which you were talking about Clinton at AIPAC. It's a similar lane to that. In New York, it's particularly useful to get in that lane on Israel issues because, again, there is such strong support for Israel and very little pushback in the other direction. And so I think he wants to get this down, right, to have this on his list of qualifications as he moves forward. I think that, there's very little question that he eventually wants to run for president. And I think he thinks this helps.
Yeah, I love what you said there, that he doesn't even have to enact this at this point, right? It's something that he could just float out, sign it into law, and never follow up on it again, because he gets the political benefit without the political consequences, which speaks to the book that you mentioned, right? That there quite literally is no political consequence for attacking the pro-Palestinian side of the debate, and there seems to be nothing but pure benefit. From your perspective, how I want to ask you this may not be a fair question, but what do you honestly feel about that in terms of American politics, that we can full-throatedly destroy and attack any pro-Palestine narrative? But if we say anything against a pro-Israel narrative, no matter no matter the nuances, right? There's many pro-Israel narratives. None of them are consistently the same. They're not monolithic. But if you say anything negative against Israel, there is hell to pay. It's an imbalance there. What do you think about that?
Well, to your point on the Israeli side, you can say things in America which are loudly said by Israelis. On the Israeli left, or sometimes just centrist Israelis. Frankly, you can simply state the United States stated official position on Israel-Palestine and have it be painted as an anti-Israel statement. Right? If you say that you believe strongly in Palestinian national autonomy, right, that's exactly what the Oslo Accord says. Right? It's very vague, and it has gone very poorly in part as a result of vagueness, in addition to other things. But you can take a position which is not by any reasonable stance anti-Israel, and yet at least at the level of high-flying politics, that can be painted as anti-Israel. You go to the other side and try to sort of specifically take actions that are going to adversely affect Israel, and there is hell to pay, as you note. I do think that there's a lot of problems with the Israel lobby argument. I think it tends to underplay and kind of skirt around some of the reasons why Americans do have such affinity for Israel. But where it is completely dead on is when it says there is no effective counter lobby. Right. There's no effective pushback, and that hurts everybody. And that's actually part of the point that Mearsheimer and Walter are making in this book, The Israel Lobby, which is recommended if you take it with with enough grains of salt. This pushes things in such an extreme direction that it no longer represents the sort of mainstream Israeli perspective. It no longer represents the perspectives you hear in the Jewish community, let alone the Palestinian side, right? That's like beyond the pale, right? But even the sort of kind of centrist Israeli perspective gets pushed to the side because it's like the push does not have to be that strong if there's nothing resisting the push, and so you end up with
go ahead, finish that thought because I want to follow up. Go ahead, finish the thought.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, you end up with AIPAC ending up sort of promoting a position which is to the right of so much of the Israeli electorate. Right. I mean, it becomes being pro-Israel means it used to be pro-Likud, which is the sort of quote unquote mainstream conservative party, but now it's almost being pro-Israel means you need to be some of these very far right Yisrael Beitenu or these basically settler parties. Right, and why is that? It's just because there's enough of a push in the one direction and no push back. And when you look at Cuomo's situation, that comes through very forcefully.
Matt, Professor Sikowitz, thanks so much for this conversation. There is at least 10 more conversations that we need to have to unpack this. And next time you come on, I'll probably bring in some other voices. But what I wanted to point out is that you, as a Jewish American, stating what you've just stated, I'm quite sure you actually get attacked from right-leaning Jewish voices who, I don't know if they would call you anti-Semitic, but I have actually seen Jewish Americans being called anti-Semitic because they don't take the hardline right position. Just briefly tell me, have you encountered that? And if you haven't, when we publish this, you probably will.
Right. Well, I think that the answer is yes, I have. I mean, I tend to occupy a position that draws ire from a number of directions. I am Jewish. I'm not just Jewish. I'm actually very observant. I'm an Orthodox Jew, a very modern one, but an observant Jew. And my positions do not make me a lot of friends. They make me more friends than you might think, which says that the minority opinion is not quite as small as you think, but it's awfully quiet. There are other realms of the Jewish world, of course, the Tikkun community, for example, where this more even-handed or pro-Palestinian approach is understood to be part of Jewish values and part of Jewish responsibility. But that said, there is no question that there is an intense defensiveness when it comes to Israel and the Jewish community for a number of reasons. There's another nice book that your audience might be interested in called The Crisis of Zionism by Peter Beinart, who talks a little bit about how Israel, for many Jews, became sort of their identity point with the receding of religion. I will say, and this just to make sure everybody gets mad, when it
Go ahead and piss off everybody. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I mean, I am personally somebody who is extremely committed to what I believe to be the organizations that are driving towards Palestinian rights. Like I said, I lived in Bethlehem and Ramallah with Palestinian families for a year. It doesn't make me authentic, but I'm open-minded, I promise you. But BDS does worry me in a lot of ways. Right, and this is where I get sort of pinched in the middle, in that I don't see BDS as being something that is driving us towards the sort of peaceful solution, which I think is difficult, but still this much possible. So I certainly get problems from the Jewish world. There's no question.
So now our conversation can't be over now. So because I have to follow up on this. So if BDS bothers you, and to a certain extent,
aspects of it bother me.
What aspects would you separate this from? Because there's a lot of parallels, and there's a lot of narratives trying to create parallels between the BDS movement and the anti-apartheid movement. Where do you draw the line between this tactic that BDS is using?
Well, I mean, all historical metaphors are imperfect. There are a few ways in which that draws that the BDS strikes me as being very different, which again I know upset. I mean, some people disagree. Mm-hmm. I respect those who do, but I do disagree. I think one major difference is when you look at apartheid and you look at the African National Congress, the ANC. It was pro-apartheid, right? It thought that the leadership thought that was the way towards a solution. When you look at Palestinian leadership, and I do want to point out that much of Palestinian leadership is very unpopular amongst Palestinians. This is true. Mm. But when you look at Palestinian leadership, it is not in favor of this, right? Almost uniformly. There's going to be exceptions, and there are exceptions, but including both representatives from the Palestinian Authority and also people like Ayman Oda, a major Palestinian-Israeli Knesset member, a parliament member. There is a significant sentiment amongst the Palestinian, it tends to be the elite world, and again, a lot of people think that those elites are out of touch, but there does tend to be a sentiment that says that BDS is a way to avoid negotiation, to avoid moving towards a two-state solution. That's one difference. There is I mean, the other difference, and this is the part that gets people really twisted up, and is when you look at apartheid South Africa. I think that it's very easy to look at the narrative that says the oppressor and the oppressed and the sort of the thief and the stolen from is cleaner. It depends if you think that Israel is the ancestral home of the Jewish people and that the Jewish people have the right to national sovereignty and autonomy. And if you do, it's much messier than the case of South Africa. Yeah. That's a difference. Again, it's like a very long conversation to spell out. Yeah. I mean, those come to mind. I mean, the real ultimate difference that I would put forth is that I am a believer that as impossible as the two-state solution looks, it is still the best answer, or it's maybe the worst answer except for all the other answers. Mm-hmm. And that when it came to South Africa, there was a solution that the apartheid movement worked towards. And I happen to believe that the solution that has the best chance of returning the most rights and giving the greatest justice to the Palestinian people is actually not being pushed towards by BDS. I am willing to be humble about this and say I might be wrong. But I think that there's a debate to be had, and I think that Palestinians have that debate, Israelis have that debate, Americans have that debate. Yeah. I don't know if that was parallel with South Africa.
This is what I want to do. This is what I want to do, Matt. I want to invite you back, and I'm going to reach out to a couple of my friends who are actually a part of the BDS movement. And I also want to bring in some voices like Rania Kalik from the Electronic Intifada, and really just kind of have a conversation, right? Because at this point, as long as people are willing to have the conversation and make and consider some things, we can actually flesh out, at least for our circle, right? We're not going to fix anything on an international scale, but in
No, but
in this context, we can actually have some meaningful dialogues that aren't being held.
Yeah, no, I think that this is really important. I mean, I think that I can probably tie that back into the Cuomo discussion.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the reasons why it's really unlikely that you see a lot of pushback against this particular movement, this particular decision, is that while there is certainly significant, if small, but a significant amount of support for Palestinian rights, even in the progressive world, there is a pretty fervent debate as to whether or not BDS is moving in the right direction. And I think you're absolutely right. It's a debate we should have, but even the progressive world is not likely to feel very comfortable
Having
or
that
not.
debate. Yeah.
Right, exactly. I mean, it's very difficult, right? And so, in some ways, Cuomo, why did he do this on this issue? Well, one, he's got cover when it comes to BDS.
Yeah,
he can get away with it, particularly because even people who are on the left, many, if it were a decision which was directly against, let's say, the two-state solution, right? If Cuomo wanted to say anybody who was for the two-state solution, was for Palestinian sovereignty, is banned from whatever, then people would get up and scream.
Yeah.
The Jewish center and the Jewish left would get up and scream. But when he bans BDS, it's much less comfortable. Which isn't to say that maybe that's wrong. Maybe we need to have that discussion. But as it stands,
Or do you mean that it's much more comfortable for him to get away with that, right? Because
yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was sort of reversing the positions. Yeah, he can get away with that. There's basically no cost because not only, of course, the Israeli right and the American right and sort of the blindered Zionists are going to be against BDS, but even people. Some people who consider themselves really pro-Palestinian are also against BDS.
Yeah.
And you take my word. You can look at Noam Chomsky. You can look at any number of figures who have progressive or left-leaning credentials without question. But they also disapprove of BDS. And disapprove might be wrong. I don't think Chomsky would say he disapproves. I think he doesn't think it's going to be effective, which is a slightly different idea.
Let me jump in there quick. Let me jump in there real
please.
quick because the thing that stands out in this conversation is the fact that the progressive side, and you've said this, but I want to reiterate this.
Yeah.
People who are ostensibly for a solution, a two-state solution, or in all the variations, right? We can't even have this conversation because
it's very hard.
It's very hard. It's very difficult, and people avoid it. You could see it because there are very few articles being written right now about this strong-armed authoritarian tactic, in my opinion, by Cuomo for political purposes. There's very little being written about this, and we're not talking about a governor of a small. We're talking about Andrew Cuomo, the New York, right?
I mean, the real story is that he's not just the governor of New York. He's a guy setting up for a run for president.
Yeah.
And the way he's doing it is in part by proving who he is, by putting forth this this fairly empty, I think. Again, I don't think it goes anywhere, but just a declaration that we're not going to have this discussion. This is not going to be part of our discourse when it's there, right? You can't just close your eyes and make it go away.
That's the other thing that drives me crazy about this is that he doesn't directly target BDS as an official movement. He targets anyone who wants to boycott or divest or sanction. He doesn't do if they're going to boycott and divest and sanction, then we're going to go after them. He's saying if they're going to do either or. So he's opening a wide net that if he actually tried to carry through this and go through with this would be on the level of McCarthyism that is insane, that we have not seen in a long time. But he could just be playing this as a political ploy, and this may be the last time we heard of it. Either way, I think it's very disturbing. Matt, I have to cut it here, man. Thanks so much for the conversation. I will get with you and some other voices, and I think we should just chop it up and let you guys just go back and forth. And whether something comes of it or not, it's a discussion that I think should be had.
If it's framed in terms of a discussion, I'm thrilled to do it. A debate does not necessarily interest me, but let's work through ideas together is always something I'm up for.
Well, all discussions have overtones of debate. But
there's contention, but there's a framing element to it, right?
Yeah,
So I'm with you. Yeah.
Yeah. I got you.
No.
I'm in it for the conversation.
Pursuit is for greater understanding as opposed to for advocacy, I am all for it.
Absolutely. Sounds good. Hey, Matt Sinkowitz, tell everyone how to get Professor Sinkowitz, tell them how to get up with you.
Oh, get me if you want to follow me on Twitter at Media Studied. Is where you'll find me. If you can figure out, I don't know if you can put in show notes or something, Ben, you can just Google me and find me on various academia.edu and stuff like that. If you really, for some reason, want to find me, hopefully for not anything too nefarious, you can just Google the Boston College Communication Department, and I'm the guy who looks like this.
All right, there you go. Hey, thanks so much for joining me, man. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks, Ben. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. 857-600-0518 to join the conversation. I knew that conversation was going to go much longer than what I planned because you can't really have a superficial conversation or a topical conversation about that without actually diving into some of the more complicated portions of the conversation. And I guess that's to be expected, right? Because you're talking about years and years of different positions, different arguments, different proposed solutions, different complications. There's a lot involved with this. Just Cuomo's decision to boycott, divest, and sanction anyone who wants to boycott, divest, and sanction Israel. All right, let's take this caller. Caller, you're already live on the air. What is your name, comment, and/or question?
Hi, Benjamin. Thanks for taking my call. My name is Steve. I live in Washington. And I think to comment to Professor Matt, I can't pronounce his last name either.
Yeah, it's tough, man.
But what he had mentioned, my parents are immigrants from Israel. They moved to the United States in 1979. And I guess I could categorize them in that very hard pro-Israel, very one kind of narrow view of the situation. But I think I can understand where they come from, and it's kind of like a hardened survival behavior. I mean, my parents have had grandparents that died in the Holocaust, and family, we have a very, very small family as a result of it. And I think the younger generation, like my generation of Israeli Jews and American Jews, see it very differently. And I don't really blame them for being so, I can't think of another word to say it, like pro-Israel and anti-Palestinian. I only try and open their eyes to seeing the other side of it and the humanity of it. But I think what Cuomo's doing is just a political ploy. I think it's absurd, but I think it's just a political ploy, and he thinks he's doing something that will get him attention, and it's working. But in general, I think the younger generation, I'm in my mid-30s, our generation, even younger, we see it as a more nuanced situation, and I think the professor is a perfect example of how it's not a black and white situation, but it's gray, and there's many facets that can be seen.
Thanks so much for that call. I actually love listening to some of the voices that I found who are every iteration that I love listening to Jewish American voices who can bring a reasoned and principled critique against other Jews. I understand how difficult it is to take a position that's not popular with your own family, right? I understand that. And so I really do enjoy hearing voices, some key voices out there who are speaking from a younger generation perspective, who are able to look at it with a more nuanced lens. And what's most interesting to me is the fact that those voices are in a lot of ways being marginalized, almost whitewashed, for lack of a better word, right? They're being marginalized or whitewashed because it goes against the standard narrative or the standard accepted Israel lobby narrative. And so you have a lot of those key voices being shut out, some of whom I'm going to get on the show to add to this conversation as we unpack it more. 857-600-0518. Again, it was too big of a conversation to have in 20 minutes, but we tried. and I agree with almost everything, particularly as it pertains to Andrew Cuomo's political ploy, because that's all it is. I really want to know if they're going to carry this out, though. Are they going to go through with this? Because the more they go through with this, if the I forgot the name of the office that is actually charged with creating the list, and they have 180 days to create this list. If they actually go through with creating this list in a very robust fashion, this story is going to blow up to be something a lot bigger than what they're thinking, and there may be ramifications. The most fascinating thing that Professor Sikowitz said is the fact that there is no countervailing force. There's no political price to pay to be anti-Palestinian or to speak negatively of the pro-Palestinian movement, whereas there is hell to pay on the other side of the equation, and that imbalance creates problems like we see with Governor Cuomo. All right. So many more things to talk about. Let's shift gears. You can still call in on the AP, the Associated Press. You can call in and discuss Governor Cuomo. I also want to talk about what else is in my headline. I forgot what's in my headline for tonight. Okay, here we go. President Obama and Elizabeth Warren are preparing, according to some sources, preparing to come out and support Hillary Clinton, and not only support, but endorse Hillary Clinton. No surprise, no shock. If you're shocked by this, please, come on, don't be shocked by this. This is exactly what you expect from the sitting president of a party. He is going to endorse the nominee. I do see some people saying that either President Obama was lying in 2008 when he said that Hillary Clinton would do anything to become president, or he's lying now. I don't think it's even really. I want to know for someone, what would you expect them to do differently? I'm not saying one way or the other, but just from a pragmatic perspective, would you expect anything differently from President Obama? He's going to endorse. Matter of fact, I said this last night, Bernie Sanders is going to endorse Hillary Clinton. And I'm not saying that as if this is something he should do. I'm not making a moral judgment on it. I don't really care from a moral perspective. I'm just telling you like it is. Bernie Sanders is going to endorse Hillary Clinton. My contention is that he should get some concessions, some significant concessions for that endorsement. But he's going to endorse. And if I have to eat my shoe on air, I will. But I put money on it. He's going to endorse. The only person I really want to talk about in this endorsement conversation, though, and of course, it's going to be Elizabeth Warren. I'm not surprised by Barack Obama, nor am I disappointed by Barack Obama, nor do I have any negative commentary about President Obama endorsing Hillary Clinton, other than what else do you expect? On the other hand, Elizabeth Warren, a person who is not in a position that she could not endorse prior to this point. Barack Obama is in a position that he absolutely should not have endorsed prior to this point. He had no business, and he would have had no business as a sitting president to weigh in on a Democratic primary. None whatsoever. However, Elizabeth Warren had every reason and opportunity and justification to endorse somebody before this point. And I'm just reminded of this friend I have on Twitter. She's an older lady. We don't get along much these days because she is a fervent fervent Hillary Clinton supporter. And of course, you guys know who I am. But there's one thing we agree on. There's only one thing that both of us agree. She's all in for Hillary Clinton. I'm all in for Bernie Sanders. The only thing we agree on is that Elizabeth Warren needs to sit down somewhere, because it doesn't demonstrate bravery. I've said this, and I'm going to continue to say this. It doesn't demonstrate bravery. It doesn't demonstrate leadership. It doesn't demonstrate anything other than you're going to take the easy road out and sit and wait until the firefight is done to run in and try to look like a champion and a hero. And I'm just not a fan of that type of leadership. Thank you, Benjamin. Thanks for reminding yourself of this. Speaking of types of leadership that I'm not a fan of, I'm going to explain to everyone why I'm not a supporter of Jill Stein, because I got a lot of questions about that. So somebody before the end of the show, make sure I discuss that. But back to Hillary Clinton and the endorsement by Elizabeth Warren. I mean, I am not surprised at this point. I was surprised in the primary as quiet as she was. But now that she's proven to be who, unfortunately, we started putting two and two together through the primaries, and we saw that she just was not that leader who's going to jump out there and help define a defining moment. She wasn't that leader. And so now that we understood that to be the case, I'm no longer surprised by the fact that she's waiting to now until the race is essentially over to make this endorsement. I'm just regurgitating the reality that she is proving not to be the leader that we need at the helm of this progressive movement. And I'll leave it like that. All right, I definitely want to talk about Jill Stein in a moment, but let me take this caller who's been patient. Caller, you're live on the air. What's your name, comment, and or question?
My name is Isha, and my comment/question is about the TPP emails. If anyone doesn't, I'm sure you reminded them, the State Department did send David Sirota a message saying that they won't release the emails till November 31st. Yes, November 31st. But it feels the fact that they're not releasing the TPP emails, which I'm 80% sure has like horrible stuff in it, like, oh, corporations should be able to sue government. You know what I mean? I mean, it feels an oddly rigged quality, even if they allegedly have some sort of national, whatever the reason they have to keep emails classified. So that is why I have a sick taste in my mouth about the whole Obama thing.
All right. Thanks so much for that call. Sounds like you got a little distracted there at the end. I'm not surprised. Again, I'm sorry, guys. You have to forgive me. I know, I don't know, maybe you want me to be upset or as upset with you guys about a lot of the stuff that goes on, but I understand fully what goes on in the background to the extent that I'm not upset about it. The only thing I'm interested in doing is how do we change that? That's it. I'm not, voter suppression, I'm not surprised by that. How do we change that? The State Department protecting and the executive branch protecting itself. I'm not surprised by that. But how do we fix that? How do we change that? That's the only thing that I'm personally interested in. But I am aware of the TPP emails not being released until essentially after the election is over. Is anyone surprised? The question is, what can we do about it right now? And I see, well, anyway, I'm not even to discuss that. I see a lot of people, I guess I am going to discuss it. A lot of people are saying they're ready to take to the streets of Philadelphia and to take over and to somehow get a victory from that. You do realize that the Democratic Party and the American government and the Republican Party are fully capable of entirely suppressing any type of violent protest or peaceful protest for that matter. Hell, they know how to co-opt. They know how to co-opt it. They know how to suppress it. They know how to crush it. So if your ultimate solution is this violent takeover or peaceful takeover in Philadelphia, I just don't see you getting the results that you want. Now, if you're going from a moral perspective and you're going to voice your dissent and you're going to just sound off, then by all means, never let anyone silence you, nor the threat of someone suppressing your voice. Don't let that silence you. Go and silence you. But as for me and my house, as we say in church, as for me and my house, I'm interested in how do we fix this so that we never run into these problems again. How do we fix this so that the people in power now who are playing these games on top of us, we're able to remove them from power and we're able to rewrite the game so that it's fair and equitable. Not to rewrite the game so that it gives us an unfair advantage, because that would be betraying our own selves. All right, I have 60 seconds left, which I'm going to take more than that because we have a lot more to talk about. So we did the Associated Press story. So many things. Cuomo, Obama, Biden, HRC, life after Bernie. Okay, this is what I want to talk about now. The last thing of the night, and feel free to call 857-600-0518 or tweet me at the BPD show. All right. So last night, someone asked me something about Jill Stein and the Green Party. And I said, they asked, am I against Bernie Sanders running as an independent? And I said, I'm against him running with the Green Party, and I'm against him running with Jill Stein. Two totally different things. I'm totally, whether he runs as an independent, I would love to see a 4 presidential party race. I would love to see a 4-man race, 4-man, woman, whatever, non-gender conforming. I don't care. 4 people, 4 different parties, 4 different ideologies on the stage. I would love to see that. But do I want to see Bernie Sanders get in line with the Green Party? No. You know why? This is my idealistic side coming out and my pragmatic side coming out. I respect strong leadership, people willing to take a risk. And I personally just did not see Jill Stein taking risk. I saw her taking shots at the easy target of disillusioned Bernie Sanders supporters. I didn't really see her taking the lead, and I've invited her on the show. Feel free. I have a lot of respect for her. I'm not downing her as an individual. I'm just saying, if you want to know why I don't want to see Bernie Sanders line up with Jill Stein, it's because I just saw Jill Stein being there like the jaded, waiting for the jaded lover to come, right? Opportunistic. And I know this is politics, and I know that's the game, but at the same time, Bernie Sanders had some serious skin in the game. Bernie Sanders had his entire career, even though he's an old man. Yes, he had his future, even though he's an old man. He put it all on the line. And it's just difference, in my opinion. You came here for my opinion. If you don't like it, you can cut it off. I still love you. You can go. But in my opinion, there is a fundamental difference between somebody who puts skin in the game and somebody who sits back and just collects all of the opportunistic people who leave. They're opportunistic and they collect all of the people who are heartbroken and they leave. That's not leadership to me. And I felt like that was 90% of Jill Stein's strategy, was to sit back and to just collect all of the brokenhearted Bernie Sanders supporters. Now that's why I don't want Bernie Sanders to align with Jill Stein, right? Why I don't want Bernie Sanders to align with the Green Party. Somebody asked me this: how can I be? And I'm sorry. Let me take the mockery out of my voice, because it was a good question. It was a legitimate question. How can I be a progressive and not support the Green Party? Easy. The Green Party doesn't support the fucking Green Party. When's the last time you saw the Green Party anywhere in your neighborhood? When's the last time you got an email from the Green Party? When's the last time you got an email in the off season from the Green Party? The Green Party didn't even, and you would not have even known that there were other presidential candidates other than Jill Stein. The Green Party didn't promote that. When's the last time you saw the Green Party in your local precinct area competing locally against Democrats and against Republicans and against libertarians? Now, some of you may live in areas like me in Massachusetts where there is a strong Green Party. Absolutely. I'd be lying if I told you otherwise. There's a strong Green Party in Massachusetts. Here. What about in Mississippi? What about in Arkansas? What about in Florida? Where are the party presence there? And where is the national effort? You can't, if you're sitting around and waiting for this system to grant you what you need to be able to get your revolution movement going, then you are by definition delusional. This system will never give the Green Party what it needs to cross the threshold for them to be a competitive force. It's like, and this is a criticism that I have of Bernie Sanders. It's like Bernie Sanders expecting that the Democratic establishment was going to play nice and play fair. We should have gone into this race. I'm talking about Bernie Sanders right now. We should have gone into this race from day one, realizing this was a guerrilla battle, that we had to fight like guerrilla warfare and go after an entire different constituency other than the establishment Democratic Party. That was fatal error number one. And likewise, the Green Party is everyone I ever hear talking about the Green Party is always saying, man, if we could just get over that 5% threshold, then we could do this and we could do. And I get it. But do you realize if you're sitting back and waiting for the residuals of the Democratic Party to fall into your laps such that you get enough, it's never going to happen. And I don't care if I dedicate 24 hours a day to supporting the Green Party, it ain't going to happen. The Green Party has to have a strategy that goes above and beyond what they're currently doing. And that, they have to be more innovative than what either party is currently doing. They have to be going out and fundraising, not above and beyond, because you're not going to go above and beyond what these parties are doing, but you have to find new sources of revenue for your party, for your candidates. I'm sorry, the Green Party, in my opinion, has not presented a strong enough front here in the United States on a 50-state level to warrant Bernie Sanders going over there. Not for what he has to give up, the political power that he would have to relinquish. Now, if he had nothing to lose whatsoever, and when I say he, I'm also talking about the progressive movement, mind you. If the progressive movement had nothing to lose whatsoever, political power speaking of political power, then fine. Hell, go with your conscience. Go and vote and run with the Green Party. But do you understand? There is still a need for Bernie Sanders to be in some position of power so that this movement that he has created has someone that they can rally behind for the next 4 years. Because that someone is not going to be Elizabeth Warren. So it has to be somebody like Bernie Sanders. And for him to go to the Green Party relinquishes his any power that he would have in D.C. And we do not need a powerless Bernie Sanders over the next 4 years. I'm sorry. It is just politically not pragmatic. It doesn't make sense. It would not make sense. And everything I'm saying right now is 1,000% my opinion. Feel free to have your own, but you came here for mine. It just makes no sense for Bernie Sanders to relinquish the political power and the political national platform that progressives need to see him in over the next 4 years, because progressives still need a rallying focal point. And for Bernie Sanders to go the way of the dinosaur and step off into the oblivion of the Green Party makes absolutely no sense. So those two reasons. And no, I'm not here to pound the drums of the Republican Party. I'm not here to pound the drums of the Democratic Party. So I'm not here to pound the drums of the Green Party. I'm here to tell you the good, the bad, the ugly of everything, every party, everybody, including myself. Sometimes I get it wrong. I don't think I'm wrong on this one. You guys have a good night.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog, join the Progressive Army, and support The Benjamin Dixon Show. It's Ben Dixon! If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.
Consider becoming a Patreon. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show.
Okay, caller. Why not? You're live on the air. What's your name, comment, and or question?
Hey, Ben. My name is Kristen.
Kristen,
and I have three questions about the Jill Stein stuff that you were doing.
Go for it.
The first question I had is, you were talking about Obama a little bit earlier, and what else did we expect him to do?
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to know what your take is on Jill Stein with regards to opportunism, and what else did you expect her to do? Because I think there's a constructive answer to that, but I'm not sure what it is.
Okay. What's your other two questions? Go ahead.
The second question is, again, a parallel question. I feel like the comparison that you're making with regards to her being opportunistic is fair. But if I paralleled, I'd say there's CNN and there's Fox, and we can't expect your show to be CNN and Fox instantly, right? Mm-hmm. You do things to improve and to take that market share and to show your audience that you have something. And the Green Party has tried to do that with things like getting former Democratic Congressman Cynthia McKinney to be their presidential candidate in 2008, and so on. So they've been working, but it takes time. And so I'm wondering if you see any sort of parallels or reasons to maybe cut them some slack as to how long it takes to actually challenge the two-party system.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, and the third question.
I don't think I remember the third question anymore, so that's fine.
Well, if it comes to you, just let me know. Okay.
Okay.
So your first question, what else would I expect Jill Stein to do?
Yeah.
I don't know. Honestly, I don't know, because I think I actually said that I get it. That's the political play that she wanted to have. But to me, that undermined Bernie Sanders in the midst of her feigning love for Bernie Sanders. And that's the problem I had with
entirely.
That it's kind of like you just sit back and collect you're benefiting off of his failings. And that's why I expressly don't want Bernie Sanders to run with Jill Stein, because she benefited off of his failure. And to me, that's just a moral conundrum that I can't walk into.
Okay.
Go ahead. You sound like you're about to say something. Go ahead.
I was going to say I agree with you entirely. In fact, even being a former Jill Stein voter, I tweeted at her during the campaign, during the primary season, to say, basically, like, in a nice way, can you cool it till July? You know?
Yeah.
And I understand exactly where you're coming from. That said, I figured if we're going to give, you don't want Bernie to go with Jill Stein, then the alternative is going with Hillary Clinton. And if Jill Stein's crime is that she was opportunistic for a progressive cause, and Hillary Clinton's crime is Iraq and Haiti and Honduras and Libya, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, I'll take opportunistic for the progressive cause.
Right. Well, in terms of character judgment there's no character judgment between Hillary Clinton and a Jill Stein, right? So we're not making that comparison, right? Because there's no comparison to be made, right? In terms of just the clear question of why am I, they ask, why am I opposed to Hillary Clinton, to Bernie Sanders teaming up with Jill Stein? It's because Jill Stein has benefited from the failings of Bernie Sanders. Clear cut. Now, what else could she have done? I'm not a part of that campaign, but I'm sure there were some other strategies that she could have employed that would not have been, and I'm sure it's fine for a lot of Bernie Sanders supporters who are okay with that. So maybe her strategy is perfect, but for me, it's
not okay with it. It's just not as, It's not as bad as the alternative, I think.
Well, so the alternative is,
of course, the Democratic Party was opportunistic as well.
Oh, so. Yeah, no, across the board, right? No, I mean, it's politics, right? That's what politicians do. Yeah. But in terms of the alternative for Bernie Sanders, and by Bernie Sanders, I'm talking as he is a proxy for the progressive movement. He is a rallying focal point of the progressive movement. I would not want to see him relinquish the power and position that he can obtain for progressivism just to run with the Green Party, because he won't win with the Green Party. He would split the Democratic ticket, and unless there's a Libertarian Party on the other side, then it's a surefire win for Donald Trump, right? But if there's a fourth party involved, then I'll take back everything else I'll say. And I'm like, hell, go with the Green Party. Let's get a 4-party race going. All cards are on the table. I don't care how it falls. Let's just break that 2-party system paradigm, right? But having a 3-party race, really just advantages one of the 2 major parties, and that kind of undermines the whole purpose of the Libertarian Party and the Green Party. Your second question was give the Green Party time. Here's the thing, and here's a great comparison. You said my show compared to like Fox News, it just takes time. CNN and Fox. Here's the thing. My show is capitalizing on so many innovations. I am able to do so many more things with one person, just me, than any show on Fox News, right? I'm able to pull off things by myself because of the technologies that I leverage, because of the skill set that I leverage, and I'm just seizing the moment to do this. Now, likewise, I'm more flexible and can do things quicker than Fox News, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Think of it as a small business. A small business cannot get into a big market trying to compete with big markets, compete the same way that big enterprises who are already capitalizing on the market share, right? They have to come in and be a disruptive tech and use disruptive policies, technologies, and strategies, right? They have to come in and disrupt the game. I don't see the Green Party being disruptive in terms of their approach. They're not leveraging anything new. They're not leveraging anything different. They're really just coming in using the same political playbook that we've seen for so many years that the Democrats and the Republicans have mastered. They've mastered the art of keeping this a 2-party system. And unless a party comes along that is disruptive with either technology or strategies that we've never seen, then we're really just kind of twiddling our thumbs. And I feel like in a lot of ways we have parties who are small enough to be disruptive if they think innovatively. And you have to be inside of the party and actually see the current strategies to actually come up with that disruptive strategy. So I'm not in a position to say this is what they should do, A, B, and C. What I am in a position to say is I don't see them coming to the game like a disruptive small company would. And you take a small business, they can't compete with Google the same way Google competes. No, they have to come with a new technology, a new strategy, a new approach, and I just don't see that yet from the Green Party.
Okay, I think that's fair. I remember the third question now.
Okay, go for the third question.
It was about Bernie Sanders spending his political clout and how you were kind of talking about, you didn't use these exact words, about him getting closed out if he went green because he wouldn't be a Democrat anymore. Mm-hmm. Of course, he would probably lose his chairmanship on the Veteran Services Committee.
Yep.
But as far as changing his popularity in Vermont, I don't know that it would drastically hurt his popularity in Vermont. I think he would still be a senator and still have a mouthpiece.
Yeah.
I agree with you that he's not going to do it, first of all. I think the way that he endorsed Bill Clinton in 92 and 96, he came out and said, I endorse. And then he didn't say anything else about it. And I think that's what he's going to do again. And he's going to do it much later. Yeah. But if he hypothetically, since we're talking about were to go green, which again I don't think he's going to do, I only think he would spend a certain amount of his political clout, and there might be a payoff in that, it really allows him to stand out as a distinct voice and maybe have a tiny little wedge on the two-party system.
Here's where the disruptive
he's not going anywhere in Vermont.
No, he's not. And I'm going to make sure that Algie or whatever his name is. You're welcome on the show anytime, Al. Come on and let's talk about your campaign against Bernie Sanders in Vermont. So anyway, I really want him to come on.
That's right.
But here's where
I know you're talking about that guy.
Yeah, here's where the Green Party could have been a complete disruptive force, and they missed the opportunity. They could have looked at the game and said, this is baked in favor of Hillary Clinton odds are Bernie Sanders will never win. But if we throw everything that we have behind someone like Bernie Sanders to help him win, which he probably won't, then he has a loyalty to us that can be expected to be cashed in on. So we could say, Bernie Sanders, in this primary, we did everything we could to push you over the top. We encourage all of our vote. Now, is this completely against party practices? Yes. But you cannot beat the Democratic Party using standard party tactics. It has to be something disruptive. Yeah. And imagine an organization. Now, it isn't as large as Bernie Sanders' national campaign organization. However, it could have been galvanizing. It could have put some fear in the hearts of the Democrats. And Bernie Sanders likely still would have lost, but they could have cashed in and said, Bernie Sanders, we had your back this entire time. Now come over here and do something with us and have our back. That's a disruptive approach. Right. That breaks every rule. Right. And you cannot beat this two-party system playing by their rules. You got to break the rules. And that's where I think they lost an opportunity. And listen, thanks a lot for the call, because most of the time callers actually help me solidify my thinking even more. And you did exactly that. You helped me flesh that out even better for the audience. So what's your name again?
My name is Kristen. Thank you so much, Ben, for your time. I really appreciate it.
Hey, my pleasure. Thank you for the question. You had a great set of questions there. All right, folks.
Thanks so much.
This time I'm going for real. I'll catch you tomorrow.
Have a good night.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog.
Hang on.
Join the progressive.
Hey, I'm still not gone. Let me tell you why I'm not gone. You have to support the Benjamin Dixon Show. You have to at this point, right? If you aren't a patron, I don't know why. We have like 10,000 subscribers on Twitter, on Patreon, on the podcast. We have 10,000 subscribers on YouTube, and we have 15,000 followers on Twitter. Can we get 10% to support us on Patreon so that I can actually, hire an assistant so that I'm not pushing all the buttons all the time? Yeah, support the Benjamin Dixon Show. We're on the Ring of Fire network. We have been approached by some other YouTube networks that are considering bringing us on. I can't just divulge that right now, but we're in some conversations. We've been picked up by iHeartRadio. The Benjamin Dixon Show is going to go far. You get the nighttime version. You get the version where I just say whatever the hell comes to my mind. You don't get the polished journalist version that I probably would do if I was on at 10 o'clock in the morning. You get the real. So support the real. I'll keep it real 100%. Go to patreon.com/the BPD show and support the Benjamin Dixon Show. And you can be a part of this progressive movement. Now, I'm going to do my best to actually go home this time. Let's see if I can cue up the music the right way. Here we go. For the last time, good night.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog, join the Progressive Army, and support the Benjamin Dixon Show. It's Ben Dixon! If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.
Consider becoming a Patreon. Go to www.patreon.com/the BPD show and support the Benjamin Dixon Show.